Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. The last day of the first quarter. Bet you didn't think of that. Yes, it's also the last day for signing up for the Affordable Care Act. Last day of the first quarter. Last day of March. Tomorrow's April Fool's Day, a fun day around the country. So tonight, no April Fools. I'm going to say there is good news from the markets. There is good news from the economy. There's good news from Washington. The president's supporters seem satisfied with the surge. They like that word. The surge for the Affordable Care Act. I understand the website was a little wobbly today, but then again, we've learned to applaud that because that means there's great interest. There is good news. No, nothing but good news to start the program tonight. Later on, we'll speak of General Motors and Mary Barra's testimony. Later on, we'll speak of the war theaters. But to now, I turn to my colleague and co-host, Thaddeus McCotter, WJR, the great voice of the Great Lakes. Thaddeus, it's springtime. There's good news in the markets. Is there good news in Detroit tonight? Good evening to you, Thaddeus.
Good evening, John. Well, you just mentioned GM, and that's obviously a great concern to so many people here. Right. That and the fact that today I was bitten by a dog.
You were bitten by a dog in Detroit today?
Yes.
A wild dog? A roving dog?
No, it was a domesticated pet. It wasn't wild, although I am watching to make sure that I don't start foaming at the mouth in about 2 months.
Well, I regret to hear. I was thinking you were going to tell me that the Detroit Tigers were playing. So when do the Tigers haven't opened their season yet? I've got to start checking.
They opened today, John. They opened today, and they won 4-3 with a walk-off base hit in the bottom of the ninth inning. It was great. It was helped take my mind off my dog bite.
Yes. Now, you see, that's what I've learned with Mr. McCotter is that if you talk about the Tigers or the Red Wings or any Detroit's team, he immediately cheers up. And the Tigers, I'm looking at the...
Unless it's the Lions, John.
I didn't mention the Lions. I knew I've mentioned the Lions before, and you don't take well to that. Let's see. Alex Gonzalez helps Brad Osma start his tenure as Tigers manager with a win. So it's good news for the Detroit Tigers. How do you like their team this year, Thaddeus? Have you looked at the lineup?
Well, it's already starting to... They're worried about the bullpen, worried about some injuries. We signed Cabrera to a long-term deal, which is good. We have Verlander locked down on a long-term deal. And Osmus is an Ivy Leaguer. I won't hold that against him, but he's always struck me. The catchers make exceptional managers, and I think he's going to continue in that tradition.
Good news. So we turn to Aaron Task, the editor-in-chief of Yahoo Finance and the host of the Daily Ticker. Aaron, I hope I didn't oversell this. The market seemed happy today. Janet Yellen came out and cooed like a dove. It's an obvious metaphor. What the heck, Aaron? What did she say that pleased everybody? And with the first quarter behind us, are we going to be pleased on April 1st? Good evening to you, Aaron.
Good evening to you, John. I'm thinking today must be April Fool's Day because I'm not used to you being so chipper and upbeat, especially about matters relating to the economy. But I will take you at your word. There is some good news for the market, which is that Janet Yellen said, quote, "The recovery still feels like a recession to many Americans, and also looks that way in some economic statistics." And that she said the extraordinary commitment the Fed has made is still needed and will be for some time. So in sum, she basically walked back the 6 months comment that she made in her first press conference, which got some people worried that the Fed was going to start reining in all the easy money sooner rather than later. Janet Yellen was today reassuring Wall Street, at least, that she is still going to be there to support speculation in the financial markets on the hopes that that will also help the economy.
Does that mean that the markets are rising because the economy is improving or because there's no threat from the Fed? I want to be positive here, Aaron, but easy money is not positive.
Well, the reality is the last batch of economic data has not been particularly strong. We had a good October, a good November, and then December, January, and February, the economy definitely slowed down, and the big question now is, was that all because of the weather, or was there something else going on that was hurting the economy? And the obvious concern is the slowdown in China, which is not weather-related. They're just having a real slowdown. And, China's economy is one of the engines of growth for the globe. So if they're slowing down, it means we're going to feel the effects, and it's certainly it's going to be a global issue. So there is hope. Hope springs eternal. But I think on Wall Street at least, they know that without the Fed, this market would be a lot lower than it is today.
Thaddeus, you have a question for Aaron.
Yes, Aaron, how are the businesses forecasting for the future, their quarterly projections, their earnings? How is that going?
Well, we're gonna get first quarter earnings in a couple weeks, and right now the analysts are estimating essentially a flat quarter, so essentially no earnings growth for the first quarter for the S&P 500, which is the biggest 500 stocks or companies in this country. Typically, analysts lowball a little bit, so then the companies beat. So let's say that there's 1 to 2% earnings growth. Not great shakes. And probably more concerning is that corporations, they're reducing their hiring plans for the year. They haven't been spending money through this whole recovery, and they have no plans to do so right now because there really isn't the end demand that they want to see. So the other thing that has been driven the market higher, you have the easy money from the Fed, you have corporations who are buying back their stock and doing other things to make their earnings per share look better, but it's not a growth story. And that is the big concern out there for the bulls. It's hard for them to answer that. They keep saying the CapEx, the capital expenditure cycle is coming, but it's still a ways away, and there's no sign that it's coming anytime soon.
Thaddeus, you mentioned General Motors. I've done some reporting these last weeks. Mary Barra is testifying before the House tomorrow, I believe, and the Senate on Wednesday. Locally, is there concern that this recall story will damage General Motors just as it's recovering?
There is always that concern, John, but I think that the one thing that we hear in Detroit is we want to make sure that the repeat performance of 2008 doesn't occur. As you recall, in 2008, they got off to a very bad start when they went in front of Congress. And I think Ms. Barra has learned from that. They know that that's a concern, the atmospherics of it. And as for the reality of it, I would defer to Aaron. We've not seen the market yet think that this is going to be a huge problem for GM, but Ms. Barra is very aware that could change.
Yeah, 2.6 million recalled nationally. I think much more than that across the planet. Aaron, do you hear buzz on it?
Well, I think the market, to Thaddeus' point, is betting that, first of all, all these recalls were for cars made by the old GM. The new company has gone through bankruptcy, so by law, their exposure is very limited. Their liability is limited. The concern is the reputational risk that GM is going to take, and a lot of that is going to be determined by how Mary Barra performs, for lack of a better word, in front of Congress tomorrow. And to Thaddeus' point, I'm pretty sure she's going to fly commercial to Washington because of the optics of Rick Wagner and those other auto execs flying private jets to D.C. in 2008, and they got sent scurrying back home. So hopefully she'll put a human face on this. She'll say, look, we made mistakes in the past. This is what we're doing to rectify them. Maybe she's going to announce a compensation plan for the victims, and she's going to hopefully, again, lay out the clear steps that GM is taking to make sure that something like this never happens again. And then the question is, how will she be voted on in the court of opinion, public opinion? Will the American public say, thank you, Mary Barra, I have confidence in GM, or will she say something, or will some congressperson bring out some evidence that shows that GM knew even more and could have done even more sooner, and that hurts their reputation, and that could be a problem going forward. That's what's not in the stock right now, is that she trips up or someone trips her up.
Have you seen anything locally, Thaddeus, about concerns about Mary Barra or about the facts that haven't been discovered yet?
Well, there is some concern, but I think the overarching view is it was the old GM, as you know, being the automotive capital of the world, as we like to still call ourselves. We've had recalls before. We've had sad, unfortunate, tragic losses of life related to those defects. And I think Aaron's absolutely right. The only wild card is how the members of Congress behave towards Ms. Barra. And one of the problems is not necessarily some new evidence or anything else coming up, but they may wish to score some points because of the help that GM had in the past, and they may still have that axe to grind.
Thaddeus McCotter, my colleague, is at WJR in Detroit, the great voice of the Great Lakes, and Aaron Task is the host of the Daily Ticker as well as the editor-in-chief of Yahoo Finance. End of the first quarter. It's in the books. It was positive. I'm John Batchelor.